Hey everybody, welcome to the afternoon Ask Anything here from DKPittsburghSports.com. I'm Chris Carter here with Taylor Haase and Tom Reed. We're here to take all your questions. So this, of course, is the video format. This is also going to be reproduced as a podcast. So for those who maybe can't stick around the whole time, you'll be able to get it on DK Sports Radio later. So be tuning in for that. Of course, today we are taking all your questions. We're on Facebook Live. We're on YouTube. We're on Periscope. Anywhere that you're viewing us, leave a comment in the stream, and then we will be able to get to it and answer it right here on the show. Should put this out here, though. You got a football guy, you got a football hockey guy, and you got one of the best hockey writers in the world. So we're not the baseball crew. So if you got some Pirates questions, we can try. But that ain't our wheelhouse. That ain't something where we gonna hit a home run on all the time. So do keep that in tune for questions. Before we get started, I gotta ask Tom. You smoking on a cigar over there, man? What kind of doobie you got?
This is just an everyday cigar. I want this to have you guys are too young for this, but kind of a Dean Martin roast feel, where back in the day, Dean Martin and all of his celebrity friends would get together and they would drink on stage and they would all be smoking. So it's just a little bit of a Dean Martin roast vibe.
I hear that. Lots of stuff there. All right, we do have a question already, and this is obviously a hockey question. Matt Wishon asks, let's talk about the almost implosion last night, please, because I wasn't able to watch. I was cranking out center footage on the NFL draft, but I'm just getting all the updates on my phone. I'm like, oh, the Penguins are crushing them. Oh, they're not crushing. Oh, God, this is getting really close. And they go, okay, they pulled it out. What happened, guys?
God, you go, Taylor. You jump first.
Tom and I were just talking before we went live. Like, what we do now on the site is, we put up like just a real quick gamer kind of as soon as just a straight recap as soon as the game ends. And I had to do that last night. It was me, Dave, and Day in there. And I started at second intermission. And I had the word like route in the headline because they're up like 6-0. And then I was like, maybe like when I write my actual story, it'll be about Tristan Jarry's shutout. And then he let in the first one. And I was like, oh, okay. So I got to think of something else now. And then it started falling apart. And there are a lot of different guys. Letang looked awful. Jarry looked pretty bad. And he that last goal was on him. I don't know if you guys saw, but the one that they scored in the last minute to make it a 1-goal game, it's because he was going for the empty netter. The Devils dumped the puck in, and he grabbed it. Well, he tried to grab it, put it in front of his stick. It didn't work out. He lost it. They got it, and then they put it behind the net. He skated behind the net because it looked like he was going to try to get the puck and shoot it. And then that's when he lost it and they scored. But that could have been an awful comeback. Comeback win for the Devils. Great comeback win for the Devils. Awful collapse for the Penguins. But yeah,
didn't they make history, Taylor? It was 6 goals. The first team to ever win a game in which they gave up 6 goals in the third period.
Yeah, that
Crazy.
Was. I've obviously never seen anything like that. I think the first question to Sullivan was like, "What happened?" And he's like, "I've never seen anything like that."
You know what? The Devils. I'll say this: their collective roster is a minor league team right now. But A, they're very fast. B, there's some high-end talent, some of those young guys. And C, they don't give up in games. Over the weekend, they did this twice to the Rangers, and the Rangers ended up hanging on. And in one game, they came all the way back and tied it, and the Rangers had to win in the last minute. But you can expect this the next 2 games, too. The Devils, they don't care. They're not playing for anything other than trying to stay in the lineup and in the future plans of this organization. And again, they fly. They are a fast team. And they're just going to keep coming at teams.
Yeah, and because they were missing a lot of key guys going into this. They obviously traded Palmieri, Zajac. They had their 2 top leading scorers were then injured. Mackenzie Blackwood was injured. Their starting goalie PK Subban went on the COVID list. So it was a lot of the guy because when I watch Wilkes-Barre and Binghamton and AHL a lot, their affiliate, and I've seen I'm looking at the roster to start the game, and I was like, I think this is Binghamton's roster, Connor Carrick, there's Nolan Foote, and then but then Nolan Foote got a goal, so it was the young guys really doing it for them.
It certainly looked like that. is there anything alarming about how that worked? I mean, they still got the win, but is there something that's alarming right now for the Penguins to see goals given up that quickly, and some of the worries that everyone's kind of having, like, is something weird going to happen in April that messes up the flow that this team has had?
I would say they've lost that and then the loss to the Sabres. The thing they kept repeating in like the post games was that they just got outworked, which I think is like concerning. This time of year, I think Bluger said that too. Like people are like in Buffalo, like everyone was kind of asked like should is this time to worry? And Bluger said like it's a bit concerning that it's happening at this time of year. But again, I don't know if you could look at last night's game and say like, okay, this is
okay,
because like that's just so out of the ordinary. Like I've never seen anything. No one's ever seen anything like that. I don't know. Yeah, like what Lewis says, they're all playing for a job. It is like a lot of young guys who like Nolan Foote scored his first like NHL goal last night. And I've mentioned this on our podcast, the 6687 podcast, that it's kind of like the 03-04 Penguins, because I just did like the oral history on those guys, and they had the 18-game losing streak. They were terrible, but then after they broke the streak, in the last stretch of the season when there was no pressure, they went like the 11-5-2 to finish the season, like just a really good stretch for that team. And it was because it was a bunch of young guys looking for a shot on the roster and just playing with no pressure. So they have another series against Buffalo. That's not going to be easy. These games against New Jersey are not going to be easy, like we might have thought earlier in the season.
Certainly. Let's switch topics real quick to football. We have a question here from Josh Thomas. Also, again, if you're watching this stream, leave a comment. We will get to it on this show and answer your questions. We're focusing on Steelers and Penguins right now. A little bit of Pitt too, if you want to get there into college sports. If you want to give a Pirates question, ask away. Just know that none of our Pirates writers are on the stream right now. But this question comes from Josh Thomas, who says, Steelers going forward with Big Ben this year. If you had to fast forward to the following year, what do you think the Steelers do at quarterback if Ben decides to retire? Good question, Josh, because that's the $1 million question, right? Everyone wants to know what's coming next. The Steelers always weigh their options. They try not to sell the farm. I don't think that they would do a move like the Niners did this year, where they traded 3 first-round picks to get the 3rd overall pick of the draft. That's not their way. But what they will look at is, hey, what's this quarterback class looking like? Because everyone always looks like this year. Everyone's talking about, it's Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields and Mac Jones and Trey Lance and Zach Wilson and all these guys. We're talking about these guys often every year like they're the only quarterbacks that will ever be available again. But this time next year, people are going to be talking about Sam Howell from North Carolina or Desmond Ridder or Phil Jerkovich. So it's going to be difficult to assess who those guys are. I mean, who knows? Next year, if Aaron Rodgers, we saw how their season ended with the Packers this year. What if he's just mad? He's like, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm done with the Packers. That could shake up the entire quarterback market. There could be other quarterbacks. We saw several quarterbacks move this offseason alone. It could be even crazier next year. So the Steelers are going to reassess things. They might look for a veteran to kind of keep up just to keep the offense going with a vet. But they could say, you know what? If the right guy falls to us in the first round, we may take that guy because, a Phil Jerkovich, I'm not sure if he comes in the draft next year, if he's a top 10 pick. He might be a top 20 pick or a top 25 pick, and that might be in the range that works for the Steelers, either as a natural pick or trading up to get one. Tom, I know you and I have talked about, the trajectory of Ben and what things are. Have you thought about, we've talked about what you see as maybe the future for the Steelers at quarterback after Ben's done?
Yeah, you would think just what you just laid out is probably the best roadmap to go on. I would also caution, or not caution, but mention, the 49ers just 2 years ago went to the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
And they had no idea a year earlier that Jimmy Garoppolo was even going to be on the market. So sometimes we see in the NFL where things work out, where guys move. They get a chance at a veteran. And I mean, I'm not sure if you wanted the quarterback from Philadelphia, Carson Wentz, but I can guarantee you 2 or 3 years ago, we never had any inkling that Carson Wentz was going to become available. So a lot can change in 1 year in the NFL. And obviously the draft guys will be who they will be. but sometimes a veteran quarterback, for some possible reason, becomes available. So I think it's one of those things you just have to answer like a year from now, right?
Right. Yeah. It's too far ahead to know anything right now, and we'll see how that plays out. But our man Dan Lavoie from Dan from San Fran, he's the Niners fan that's always hanging out with us. We always appreciate you, Dan. He says Jimmy Garoppolo is the starting quarterback for the Steelers in 2022. He's been a big Jimmy guy. I told him that year when they were headed to the Super Bowl, I'm like, look, Jimmy's not the man. He's a passenger of a quarterback. He'll get the job done when it's there, but he ain't gonna like be the game changer for you. And of course, Dan's like the 49er way is winning. We know, Dan. But he also has a hockey question, and it's to you, Taylor. It's a little fun one here. He says, Taylor, will you be adding a Space Force patch to your Pens jerseys? But really, we've seen some fun warm-up jerseys. What are your favorites?
To touch on the Space Force thing, for people that don't know, the Penguins had their military appreciation last night. And so they wear specialty warm-up jerseys. They're actually designed by Zach Aston Reese. And as part of it, each guy they were able to pick which branch they wanted represented on the shoulder patch, and I mean the Space Force was one of the options, and so like I saw that and I was like, oh god, I was like, I need to see who was going to pick the Space Force, and so like I'm up, like they come out for warm-ups and I'm up there like trying to like see who has the patch, and it was Radim Zohorna had it. He took warm-ups. He didn't play, but Radim Zohorna went with the Space Force. Emil Larmy on the taxi squad, who didn't take warm-ups, but his is up for auction. I saw he had it too, the Finnish goalie, which knowing him makes sense. And then Cody Ceci chose the Space Force. So,
wow.
And they had like the slogan. Each branch had like the slogans instead of the nameplate. I forget what the Space Force one is. I saw people saying it was always aliens, but that's not what it is. But for favorite warm-up jerseys, the ones they just had in Buffalo was pretty cool. The Pride Night jerseys, both teams had them with like the rainbow numbers. I thought I like the Penguins better than the Penguins were like white with rainbow numbers. The Sabres were gray with rainbow numbers. Those were cool. But the coolest that I can think of, just the ones they did for Crosby's 1,000th game. Because they all wore Crosby C87. We've seen that before where like maybe for nights honoring a guy like that, they wore like a number. Like I know like the Capitals, Backstrom just had his 1,000th game and they all wore like 19 on the back, but throw names, but everyone was out there wearing the C, wearing Crosby's name and number. They just did
that for Milan Lucic too.
Yeah.
Calgary.
It feels like there's been like 50 guys having their 1,000th game this season. Kind of sad year to have it with not a whole lot of fans able to see, but that's cool. But no, I mean, if you want like crazy jerseys, you just have to look at the minor leagues, because in the minors they wear them for like the actual games. They're not just warm-ups. So like I know in like the ECHL, I think in the AHL too, they do like SpongeBob nights where like one team is SpongeBob, one team is Patrick, or like they do a lot of like superhero nights where like they're not even necessarily superheroes that go head to head, but like one team I just saw like the Indy Fuel, like they all were Black Panther, and then like the other team was something like
is the Macon Whoopie still around?
The what?
The Macon Whoopie.
I have no idea what that is.
That was a minor league hockey team.
No, they have a team in the SPHL. I can't off the top of my head. I don't know what their.
It used to be their logo. Their logo was a fig leaf for Macon Whoopie. Funny. So that was always one of my favorite minor league jerseys.
They do have a team in the SPHL, but they're the Mayhem. The Mayhem. Mayhem.
Oh, the poor Whoopie.
Yeah, that's where you see a bunch of like the crazy names too.
Dan Lavoie does agree. Minor league jerseys are easily more funny.
We've talked about it before on these the Mike Spearbar ones, but like the Nailers, they had like a '90s night, and like they brought out like Carlton from Fresh Prince, and like they replaced the logo on the front with like the Nailers of Wheeling in like that font, and then like they have like I don't know how to describe the print other than like I was on like drink cups in the 90s, like the teal and the purple. So yeah, that's I wish like the NHL was able to wear fun stuff like that. Maybe like wear them for the games too, because in the NHL they just wear them for warm-ups.
Hey, anytime you can get Alfonso Ribeiro involved, it's going to be a good show. America's Funniest Home Videos. He's been a great host for that. All right, let's get it moving here. We got a question from Craig Cochran, excuse me, Craig, who asks, when would the perfect bye week be for the Steelers? So this is a good question because it was just announced about an hour ago that the NFL schedule is now set to be released on May 12th. So it'll be a couple weeks after the draft. So you're looking at a situation where now you have a sense of, okay, that's when we'll know when the Steelers are lining up with against Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, and some of the really top tier teams they're going to have to face next year. But the answer, Craig, I think honestly is later in the season. You saw how beat up the Steelers got in the season. You kind of always want that bye week. I'd say like week 8, week 9, week 10, somewhere around those weeks, because then that gives your team a chance to say, "Ooh, that was a tough start to the season. Now let's get re-energized for a final push to get ready for the playoffs." And I think a prime example of who it benefited the most was the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Go back and look at what Tom Brady was doing before their bye week late in the season. I think they had their bye week in either like early November. And when they got out of that bye week, Tom Brady turned around from throwing multiple interception games and not doing too well to play them much better. Their defense got healthy, and then they got on the run that allowed them to get to the playoffs and then keep building off of that to get to the Super Bowl. So to me, whenever I look at bye weeks, I look for mid-season to late parts of the year bye weeks so that you can actually get through it, which was why Steelers fans made such a stink, and the Steelers made such a stink of losing their week 8 bye and then not getting a bye at all, because that was a perfect situation for last year's Steelers. Think about it. They would have been 7-0. They would have been rolling and playing very well, gotten the break that they deserved, and then would have been able to recharge and then get back into the second half of the season. And who knows, maybe they figure out some things that help them not have the collapse they did late in the year. But that's neither here nor there. Tom, where would you think the best place for the bye week for the Steelers would be?
No, you're absolutely right. You want it later in the season. And of course, I mean, it goes without saying, just for everyone's purposes, never to have another season like last year where there's so much uncertainty with games. I mean, that was just what a crazy season the NFL was last year with the COVID. So many guys, so many teams couldn't. There were a couple of teams couldn't play, and it always seemed to impact the Steelers, right? Yeah. I mean, it's like 2 or 3 times with Baltimore, with Tennessee, and you think about that Baltimore week, Chris. Yeah. That's where the season kind of turned around, didn't it? I mean, they won that game.
But things got weird
very convincingly, and it kind of all went downhill after that. And again, not to make excuses, but that's where the kind of the genesis of their late season collapse began.
I agree. It is a huge part of it. I'm sure there'll be a lot more talk about the Steelers schedule coming up over the next few weeks as we get into that. Of course, the NFL draft coming up as well. Eric Straight one of our longtime listeners, viewers, commenters here. He asks, "Is there we going to see Cappy this weekend, Taylor?"
I don't know. He did skate with the team today in practice in Cranberry. He said he felt good, but didn't have like necessarily a set timeline. He did say it was a foot injury, which you could kind of guess if you don't remember. He I forget who they were playing, but there was a clearing attempt that went up along the boards. When it came around, it hit him, and he went down. That was the game where like NBC showed and he was like laying face down in the tunnel before he went down to the locker room. I still see people posting memes of that, but yeah. But so you couldn't tell where it hit him, but he said it was a foot injury, so it hit him in the foot. But if you go back to when Hextall spoke the day of the trade deadline after it ended, he said Kapanen was about 10 to 14 days out, which would put them at this coming Monday, which, I mean, if that timeline is accurate, I mean, you would think that maybe this weekend he could get in a game. Yeah, but encouraging that he was out there in a regular jersey today. So
didn't he speak today too, Taylor?
Yeah. Like he
and that's usually a good sign. That's usually a good sign that the guy's about back.
You'd think. I don't know, because when Beluga was out, he spoke. Is that the
trying to get the right angle here?
when Bluger like returned to practice and spoke though the first time, it was still like I feel like it was like another week or so before he came back. So yeah.
Yeah, Mark Vase he just says don't know what to make in Whoopi, but he loves he said Savannah's now the bananas. That kind of works though. Savannah Banana. That's a cool name. Switching a little bit gears here, just a little bit. We have a Pitt question. Not often we get those.
Nice.
Turnpaw 3 asks, Chris, your best guess on how many of the 8 possible Pitt Panthers get drafted? I'd actually argue there might be 9 because you got DJ Turner, you got Bryce Hargrove, and you've got Jason Pinnock along with the 6 that everyone talks about. So there could be 9, but I see 7 getting drafted this year. So obvious ones: Rashad Weaver, Patrick Jones. They'll be gone in the middle rounds. Then you're gonna get DeMar Hamlin in the middle rounds as well. I've seen Jim Nagy actually posted something about him yesterday, just saying like, hey, this guy's versatility and knowledge is really impressive, and he has the athleticism to play slot cornerback, strong safety, and free safety. You want that. I know Paris Ford had a horrible combine, and people are looking at that, but someone's going to see that production that he had in college football, and they're going to take a late round stab at him. So you got the 2 edge rushers, you got the 2 safeties, you'll have Jalen Twyman, who's going to go somewhere in the middle rounds. So that's 5 right there. And then on top of that, you're going to have Jimmy Morris. He goes somewhere I'd say in the 5 to 7 round range, because he's definitely getting picked this year. But the what could answer your question, Turnpaw, is 3 things. Jason Pinnock had a fantastic pro day for Pitt that put him on the map for some teams. He's like 6'1", ideal length for a cornerback, ran a 4.46, 4.47 40-yard dash, had a really good vertical jump. And when you talk to receivers that play against him, they're like, that guy's tough. He's a dog. And he plays special teams. I think that he has a shot to make an NFL roster, especially in the 6th or 7th round. The wild card, the other wild cards, Bryce Hargrove, a guard who's kind of been pushed away because he wasn't an iconic player for the Panthers like Jimmy Morrissey was. But I think teams look at him, they're like, this guy still has talent. He could be a late round pickup and be a good interior offensive lineman to put on your line. So he's another guy that could fit. But DJ Turner could sneak on a roster as well. Now, the one thing I'll say is this is a very deep wide receiver class. You got Clemson's Cornell Powell looking like a 5th or 6th round pick. That's scary because that guy was really talented. I would have pegged him in other years as being a 3rd round pick. But DJ Turner's advantages here is 1, he had 1 year playing with Pitt, and he looked really good while doing so. And he looked like a very good return guy who fielded punts, didn't lose the ball, and was able to get upfield quickly. Those things do get value. So my number for you, Turnpaw, is 7 Pitt Panthers getting drafted this year. I see that happening, and hey, they may prove me wrong and get 8, but at least 6, most likely 7, possibly 8. So that'll be interesting there. Thank you for your question, Turnpaw. We're gonna keep it moving here. Mark, who asked a question earlier, he said, "This team gets lazy." Of course, talking about Penguins here. He says this team gets lazy. Last night wasn't unique. In your opinion, is this a concern come playoff time? Is this is this something that wasn't unique to last night? Because you guys talk about historically, this was numbers wise, but is this something that is becoming a theme with the Penguins?
I can't think of how many times that they've let it get this close, and they definitely haven't. It definitely hasn't been this bad of a collapse. But they do. I mean, they do kind of sit back. But I mean, like I said, the thing they said was, like they got outworked, and like they said that against Buffalo too, when from the start of the game, and that's what I mean. If you missed earlier, people are asked like, is this concerning? And Bluger said it's definitely a little concerning that it's happening at this time of year. I think, once we get to the playoffs, it's a different kind, and that's a different, energy. As I don't think we're going to see them maybe sit back with a lead in the playoffs if they get one. But it's definitely not concerning this time of year when, the division is as tight as it is.
I still think it's hard. We talked about this, Taylor, yesterday on the podcast. It's so hard to evaluate this team until assuming that they get all these guys back. We know Kapanen's close. When Gino gets back, what those guys look like when they're in the lineup. There's certainly a guy like Malkin, when you're taking chances in games, having him on the ice as someone that can take it the other way on a counter or a 2-on-1, that kind of stuff. And with Kapanen, I think is, I don't want to say a deterrent because you're still trying to score against them, but I think it helps. And again, I do think in some ways, again, that was crazy last night. That was almost I don't want to say a one-off, but again, it had never happened in history. We'll see where we go from there.
We certainly will. Let's keep it moving here with questions. Question from Mark Fazy says, as far as running back at round 1 or 2, is that a must for the Steelers? Some suggest there are guys in the lower rounds, but I think they need top talent now. I agree with you, Mark. There's guys that are like, what about Chuba Hubbard? What about Kenneth Gainwell? What about this guy? What about that guy? I'm like, listen, those guys look like they could be good running backs in the NFL. They need a guy who they're very strong about being a good running back in the NFL, and not just a good running back, a primary running back who becomes a serious threat out of the backfield. That's where I see the problem here. And again, they took their stabs in the later rounds. The last 4 NFL drafts, they picked James Conner, Jalen Samuels, Benny Snell, and Anthony McFarland. None of them worked out yet. James Conner's with the Cardinals now. We'll see how they play this out. But I think they need a guy. They haven't invested any top. In the top 2 rounds since Le'Veon Bell, and we all saw how that worked out. And after they picked Le'Veon Bell, they didn't draft another running back from 2013 until 2017 when they picked James Conner with a 3rd round comp pick. So I think that if they know what they're doing, if they get the right guy in that top 3, it works out. And that fixes everything. So thank you for your question, Mark.
Hey, Chris, I want to jump back in real quick statistically to help answer the last question, the hockeyer question. The Penguins are 19-1-1 when leading after 2 periods. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're supposed to win when you're leading after 2 periods. But so the point is that while it may have gotten hairy, and it's gotten hairy a couple of times, they usually still end up winning the games. And if you take that, I think they're 10th in the league in that category. But if you factor out teams that have only won 12 or 13 games, and then they're comfortably in the top 7 or 8. So they've been pretty good at holding on to leads after the second period.
Very good point up there, and great way to pull that up, Tom. That's
we got this thing called the internet. So
hey man, I'll try to give you credit. I figured you was cracking it on your notepad.
With my play school internet over here, Wi-Fi, I think I almost came off the page when I actually started making the computer do something else. But so far, so good.
Yeah, you're doing great. The term boss says, thanks, Chris, for the pick question. All right, let's go to a Penn's prospects question. Daniel Matos asks, apart from Felix Robert, is there any other surprise in Scranton for the Penguins?
Felix Robert, he's French Canadian.
My bad.
I thought it was Robert until he got spoke to. But no, but he's if you haven't, I've mentioned it on our podcast. I wrote about it on the site, but he's been the most pleasant surprise by far, and we'll spare the prospects. I mean, I think my expectations going into this season were kind of low for him, just because. So they signed him out of the QMJHL, and he had crazy numbers in there, but he was playing with a lot of like Samuel Poulin, NHL prospects, and he is small. He's 5'8", 5'9". And before they signed him to an AHL deal, he was committed to Canadian University to play, which it's not great hockey. So I was well, if he was going there and no one else picked him up, he can't be that good, right? But no, he's been the biggest surprise. I mean, he's 5'8", 5'9" ish, but he doesn't play like that. It's no one told him that he's that small. He's a whole lot. He's not a Connor Sherry. You can't knock him off the puck, really. I posted a highlight on Twitter and on the site the other day. Someone tried to hit him that was bigger than him and bounced off of him. Very gritty. He's been putting up points too. But as far as other surprises, I mean, they're the top 2 leading scorers, Tim Schaller and Nick Schilke, who I don't think anyone was high on coming into the season just because they are both on AHL deals. Neither of them are really prospects. I mean, Tim Schaller is 30. He played, and he's played 200 some games in the NHL. But Nick Schilke has only ever played in the AHL. He's I think 25, 26. He was a signing from Mike Vellucci before Vellucci got promoted to assistant coach. He played under Vellucci in Charlotte when they won the Calder Cup there. But yeah, I mean, he's been consistently going on he had the longest point streak to start the season, and I mean he's a right wing. I think he can play both wings, but yeah, he's been a good surprise too. Bellerive has been it's kind of been surprising how good he's been, just because it's such a difference from last year. I still don't know what it would take for him to get his shot, just because of the depth chart. He can play center and wing, but he's just been so clutch for Wilkes-Barre. I think it was of his 20 career AHL goals, 12 of them have come in either the third period or overtime. And so, I mean, he's like single-handedly won them a couple games this season. So Bellery's been a really pleasant surprise too. But I mean, Felix Robert is just like the biggest steal.
All right, we got to wrap it up here with some fire rapid responses. First of all, Daniel J. Matos keeping up the Carey Price jokes. He said if Carey Price was the goalie, this never would have happened. Very true. Carey Price is the greatest goalie of all time, greatest player of all time. Move over Michael Jordan. All right, let's go through some other things. Just want to make sure I miss. Apostolus Paul Lazarus asks, why don't they want to sign Hines Ward as a coach? Good question. Hines Ward just got signed. They joined Florida Atlantic University as their coach. So. As the receiver, yeah, it's an interesting question. He seemed like he was around the team in 2017 as he was looking around. He became a position coach for the Jets. It's a good question. I don't know. Maybe some guys aren't the fit that certain organizations want. You'd think that with Hines Ward, the leadership that he brought to the Steelers locker room, that he'd want to be part of that. But maybe that's just something that they're not ready for yet. It's a very good question. If I get an answer, I'll certainly write about it. Daniel Matos, quick question here on hockey. Now that there aren't roster limits after the trade deadline, can the Penguins bring back POJ?
Yeah, so the 23-man limit isn't around. The salary cap is still a thing. So I don't know why you would bring him back at this point, because I don't like. Are you going to say like Pettersson? Like if there's a spot for him, sure, bring him up. There's no limitations, but at this point, I mean, he's quarterbacking the top power play in Wilkes-Barre, getting top minutes. He's killing penalties down there. It's better. I think it's better just to leave him down there until they need him.
We're gonna combine these next two questions because they're along the same lines. Craig Cochran asks, how differently do you think that each of the top 3 running backs in this draft would be used year one by the Steelers? I think they're all primary backs. Javonte Williams is a power runner. As is Najee Harris, but Najee Harris is, I think, more explosive, more athletic. He makes people miss better, which is why, and he has better vision. He's the guy that I see being the pure number 1 back of this class. Travis Etienne, if he's brought in, he's going to be used more like Alvin Kamara. You're going to want him to get him out in space. You're going to want him catching the football. You're going to want him using his speed to get around the edge. And that might change. You have a sort of paradigm shift about how the Steelers have used their running backs. That's going to be interesting. And combining with that, Randy Steele asks, could Najee Harris be this year's Eddie Lacy? The thing about Eddie Lacy is like Najee Harris is built very differently. Like, you just you compare their height and weight. He's much more fit. Eddie Lacy wasn't clearing 6-foot guys with hurdles when he was at Alabama. He was a power running back who ran behind a really good offensive line like Najee Harris did, but Harris is more explosive. I like his footwork better, and he catches out the backfield phenomenally. If you saw him line up outside the numbers and some of the catches he was making, I think those Eddie Lacy comparisons would stop. But I understand everyone's always worried about missing on the running back position. Final thing here for both of you as our hockeyites. We got Eric asking basically back-to-back Rutherford questions. Do you think Rutherford gets cuz I'm not sure what that means. Gets cut.
The next.
Go to the next one.
There we go. Thank you. Will Rutherford get another job? Because I heard he wasn't done. Okay, yeah, that's what the problem was there. All right, what's your answer there?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't retire. He's still, I don't know, like as a GM, would you want to be another GM, but like as maybe a senior advisor of some sort for another team? Yeah, I think eventually he's not done. I think he gets a job somewhere eventually.
Taylor, what happens if it all implodes in Philadelphia at the end of this year? You see Jim Rutherford in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think Flyers fans would love that after what the Penguins got Exall and stole Mark Friedman from them and now have Jeff Carter. I think Flyers fans would like that. Yeah, I don't know.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Answer Mike Nesbitt. Do I think that the Steelers will draft Mills or Trask in rounds 2 or 3 if they're available? They are quarterbacks. No, I don't like either one of them. Matt says happy April 21st, everyone. Thank you. Thanks to everyone who came to the show and asked questions. Last question here from Robert Fulton. Do I think the Pittsburgh Pirates win 80 games this year? No. But none of us are baseballites. so we can't give our full things. Thank you, Robert, for the question. Thank you for all your questions. If you're listening to the podcast version, thank you for listening to it. And do subscribe to DK Sports Radio. We love all of our listeners. And hey, rate us 5 stars. Give us a positive comment. When you do both at the same time, you really help us out. And subscribe to us. We're on Apple. We're on Spotify. We're anywhere podcasts are hosted. Check us out. We got DK's Daily Shots all throughout the week. And like Taylor and Tom were talking about, we got a new episode of the 66 to 87 podcast on your Pittsburgh Penguins coming up tomorrow. Thanks again.